Hello, yes, it's Joe here, live for Joyrider TV, back with some more Q&A. Very exciting times, as always. Just give us a hello if you're on, just to let me know that you're there. But yes, my intention in this session is to answer your most challenging catamaran sailing questions and hopefully helping you with your sailing or your boats. We've got Tim on board from Clearwater, Florida, which is going to be the home of the 2022 F18 World Championships. This is going to be very exciting. What I was thinking was if the likelihood of me actually being able to get to the F18 World Championships is pretty slim. But if there was someone in the States who wanted me to come and sail with them at the World Championships on their F18, then I would be open to suggestion. So if you are the owner of an F18 in the USA and you're thinking about doing the Worlds, perhaps you don't have anybody to sail with, or perhaps you'd like me to steer your boat for you, then maybe we can talk. Interesting times. We've got Kurosh on board. Hi, Kurosh. Hope that it's still cooking out there in Dubai. Morning, Robin, also in Florida. Hi, Thiago. Great to have you on board. We've got Nikolay, who I believe might be in probably either London or Bulgaria. We've got Ollie Smith from the Wildwind team. Hi, Ollie. Ollie's currently in Canada and doing some snowboarding, and it looks absolutely incredible. And all right, we've got a question from Ollie, which is wondering about rig tension when sailing a 16 with spinnaker. Well, it's funny you should ask. It seems from the preloaded questions, this edition of the Q&A is going to be a bit of a rig tension special. Like, if you didn't see last week's Q&A, that was a bit of a helming on the trapeze special. And it seems like every week there is a theme that runs through the whole session. So, rig tension, sailing the 16 with the spinnaker. I would say sailing the 16 with the spinnaker, the rig tension would actually want to be pretty much exactly the same as if you were sailing the 16 without a spinnaker. The one concern, and this goes for all sorts of spinnaker sailing. Now, I was actually told by Willis, when using the whiteboard with the pens, always start with the lighter color. This has been an absolute top tip / game changer. So here is our boat. So we're just looking at rig tension or just forces in general when we're sailing with the spinnaker. So there's the boat, there's the mast. Are we still on? Yeah, we are. All right. The rigging attaches to the mast, something like that. And then we've obviously got the spinnaker, which would be out here somewhere, and there's the bowsprit. Now, the issue when sailing with the spinnaker is there's a lot of power in the spinnaker, especially if it's windy. And a lot of that power is going to be pulling from, well, most of it is going to be pulling from where the halyard, the top of the spinnaker, the head, is pulling from on the mast. And because the rigging is a lot lower down than this point, it means that if you're not careful, this top section of the mast is unsupported, especially to pull in this direction. Oh dear. Which means if we were just sailing along in very steady winds, especially in light winds, then it wouldn't be an issue. But if we're sailing in gusty winds, heavy winds, then all of the shock in the rig from that extra wind going in the spinnaker is going to be getting absorbed by the top part of the mast. And what I've found in my experience is if you want to snap your mast or perhaps a spinnaker pole or your boom, the way that they snap is if they're constantly flexing like that, then they're getting weaker and weaker, and then it's just going to go, it's going to make a noise and it is going to snap. So we need to somehow support the top of the mast. And this goes for if you're sailing any boat with a spinnaker where the spinnaker halyard is pulling from higher up than the hounds. So perhaps if you're sailing some sort of monohull and the spinnaker halyard comes to not much higher than where the hounds are, it's not such an issue. But on a catamaran, it is. So what we will do is we're going to use the mainsail. And this, so this would be on the, all right, excuse the drawing of the mainsail there. It's just come a little bit low. But what we're going to do is we're going to keep a good amount of tension in the main sheet. So this is pulling, we're getting all the pens out early. So this is pulling down here, which is pulling down here, which is pulling the top of the mast backwards and counteracting the force that's coming from the spinnaker. So it's the sheet tension in the mainsail that is supporting the top part of the mast when we're sailing with the spinnaker up. As far as the actual rig tension goes, it doesn't really make much difference on something like a 16 than if you were sailing without the spinnaker up. But definitely it's all about the main sheet tension. If the wind is a little bit lighter, and as a rule of thumb, the way that I would look at it is if you've been double trapezing upwind, or if the wind has been strong enough to be double trapezing upwind, then you definitely need to have that sheet tension on for the downwind with the spinnaker. Otherwise, your mast is a bit at risk. And then what we do is we'll be sailing along, main sheet cranked in, and then if we do sail into a hole, like an area of less wind, then we can just ease the main sheet off a little bit because there'll be a lot less tension, and we don't want to have the main sheet oversheeted. Oh no. We'll sheet out a bit in the area of less wind, and then as the wind comes back on, crank the main sheet back in so that, again, we're supporting the mast, and we're also reducing the amount of drag that is potentially coming from the mainsail. Okay, so there we go, just opening up with a little bit of let's not snap the mast, shall we? Okay, good to have you all here with us. Hello, Paul in Cheshire. Great to have you on board. Nice. We've got Ryan in Maui. Ryan's actually going to be this is going to get a lot of viewers interested, I know. But Ryan's actually featured in this Sunday's Show Us Your Cat. So if you want to see what the sailing is like on Maui in the Hawaiian Islands, then you should check that out. It looks absolutely stunning. I think you are going to like it. Early here. Yeah, I bet it is. We got John Claude. Hello all. In Trinidad, we are really hitting the corners of the planet. Great show. Love watching. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. We've got Arno in Edmonton, Canada. Hello, Arno. I hope it's not too chilly in Canada. We've got Diego in Portugal. All right, we've pretty much all different countries so far. We've got some more Canada with Stefan. Good morning. Thanks for tuning in. Glad you could make it. Got Mark and Janet in Ohio. Hello. Great. Nice to have you on board. All right. I think this is Arno with a question. Thinking of getting a wetsuit. a Farmer John, and 3/4 jacket for warmth and flexibility. I believe when you're saying a Farmer John, I think where I'm from, that would probably be called a Long John, and a 3/4 jacket, which would I think in the sort of terms that I'm used to, that would be like a Long John and some sort of wetsuit top. Good for warmth and flexibility. Okay, so and where was Arno? Arno in Canada. So you do need a bit of warmth there, I'm pretty sure. Generally, the Long John wetsuits are not quite as thick as the full wetsuits. So, but what you'd be looking for if you want the warmest wetsuit for sort of normal conditions, let's say if we're not sailing close to the icebergs or something, if there's not snow on the ground, then a wetsuit for cold conditions would want to be a 5/4. That means that you get 5 millimeters of rubber on your on the main parts of your body, which, depending on the quality of the wetsuit, would be on your main torso. And if it's a high quality one, that would probably extend to the upper legs as well, with that 5 mil rubber. And then you'd have 4 mil of rubber on the arms and the legs. So you're keeping that flexibility, because of course, with a wetsuit, when you're getting a thicker bit of rubber on there, you're losing a bit of the flexibility. But so if you can get a Long John, which is like a 4 mil Long John, and then get a 5/4 or a 4 mil top that goes over the top of that, then you are going to be pretty toasty. But I think when you're buying a wetsuit, it is always worth spending a bit more than, don't go for the cheaper one, go for the better one, because a wetsuit, if you look after it, will last for many years. And after having it even for a month, you could think, well, if I'd have just spent that extra $30, it would be a bit nicer. What you get when you buy a more of a premium wetsuit is, firstly, all the seams where the rubber is joined together are of a much higher quality. They'll usually have extra taping involved, so it's not going to leak water through the seams. And also they'll be using a higher quality of whether it's neoprene or whatever rubber they're using. It'll be a higher quality and probably have better stretch characteristics, and it'll be warmer. So I've just ordered a new wetsuit for myself. I did reach out to a few companies to see if I could get one without having to pay, but nobody was interested, which is fine, because it means I don't have to endorse anybody's wetsuit. But what I did is I went for a higher quality one, so that then I was going to buy a 4/3, but I went for a higher quality one so I could actually get a 3/2, so a thinner one, but it will be just as warm as a 4/3. So yes, quite a few thoughts on the topic of wetsuit purchasing. But yeah, good luck with that. But with the Long John and top, when you're talking about flexibility, there's not just the flexibility in the ability to bend your arms and legs easily, but also in changing conditions, because I do use a Long John and wetsuit top myself. And what that does is it means as the temperature is getting higher, I go through different phases. If it's a bit colder, I'll wear the whole lot, the Long John and the top. If it's getting a bit warmer, then perhaps I'll go earlier season, I'd go Long John and then maybe a rash vest over the top instead of the hot top. So I've still got that protection on the knees, which is very nice to have. And then in the middle of the summer, when it's getting really warm, I'll go for a pair of shorts, with the hot top. So I've still got that kind of wind chill, keeping that down, but you don't need it so much on your legs as you do on your upper body. So definitely flexibility. All right, we've got HJ. I hope you can also enjoy a cold beer. Yeah, cold beer as soon as I've finished. And tonight it is pizza night. Oh, yes. So there we go. I do have to finish on time today. Yeah, Ryan agrees it's going to be a good one, this Show Us Your Cat. And then we've got, I think, Nas and Gustavo from Puerto Rico also featured in this weekend's Show Us Your Cat. It's good that all the Show Us Your Cat features are tuning in. Yeah, so I'm kind of subtitling this weekend's Show Us Your Cat an island style 16-foot special. Oh, yeah. So we're going to Puerto Rico and Maui. It's going to certainly warm things up. All right. We have got Emil in the Netherlands. Good to have you on board, Emil. Thanks for tuning in. Stefan says, oh, my word. It's minus 26 degrees right now. And the sailing club is opening in 106 days. Cool. Yeah, hopefully that'll come around pretty quickly. All right. So HJ says about trailering. Has anybody got information on a mast cradle for a Hobie 16? Found a fancy part at Murray's that looks very professional. Now I use foam to protect the rear beam and the mast. Yeah, I think with a mast cradle, it is always nice to have, like with what I was saying about buying the wetsuit, it's one of those things that you spend a bit of money on it now if you've got money to spend, and then something like that is going to last longer than the boat. So as you change boats, if you're keeping the same trailer, then those sort of things you will keep. But there are various ways of going about this, but at the front of the trailer, you certainly need to have some. If this is the trailer, here's the wheel. We've got some, this is where our hull supports would probably be. So you absolutely need to have a mast support at the front. And it could be done fairly simply if you wanted to save. Like, the bottom line is anything that you buy for a boat from a shop that sells things for boats is going to be reassuringly expensive, because parts for boats are produced in much smaller quantities than parts for, let's say, cars or something, which means the cost per part is going to be much higher. So if you buy the like custom built part from a boat parts place like a chandlery, then it is going to be fairly expensive, but it is going to work very nicely indeed. But if you didn't, so then you'd have like a support there. And then if it is a really nice one, at the top here would either be, this is going to be the wrong way around, but just to give you the idea, like a U-shaped kind of holder, which is going to really cradle your mast, like the word suggests. Or here's another example, could be, we call this the mast crutch, and then it might just have a V type shape at the top with some padding, and there you go. But what you could do if you wanted to custom make a mast crutch as easily as possible for your trailer, then you'd have to obviously work out how you're going to attach it at this end. But you could just take a piece of galvanized steel box, so that that's the same size as the box tube that runs down the middle. That is massive, but you get the idea. And then on the top of this piece of box, obviously get it the right height so that the mast clears your towing vehicle. I have had it in the past where going in a dip kind of thing or going up a hill or onto a ferry, the mast smacks the car on the roof because the mast crutch not tall enough. So, I've actually gone off the board there. Apologies. So, mast crutch, and then you could just get a piece welded on the top, just flat. And then obviously you'll need to pad that, maybe with some pipe lagging or something. And then the mast can just be lashed on there. Just lost a bit of light from screen 2. All right, got the light back on. Yeah, so there's many ways to do that. And then what I would do personally for the back part of the mast, because it will sit on the back beam, you just need some padding. So just to get a piece of foam that can be wrapped around the mast, and then that can just be strapped to the back beam of the boat. That is what I would say on that topic personally. So there we go. Hope that's of some help, even if it's not of help to HJ. Hope it was just some help to someone. We've got Martin in France. Great to have you on board with us. And Stefan says, all right, here we go. Question. Do you have a suggestion for a GPS watch to record speeds and display speeds without using a smartphone? I'm keen to make it onto the speed stick this year with my Hobie 20 Miracle. Great stuff. That is really what we're into. I've decided the direction that I haven't decided, it's how it is, but the direction that my sailing has gone in, it could have gone in the competition sort of sailing direction, but because of circumstances and the conditions that we have here in Vasiliki Bay, my direction is definitely all about going as fast as possible, which I think it suits me fine. But yes, the GPS watch, there are obviously a huge amount of GPS watches on the market to choose from. The one that I use is a Locosys. I'm actually going to type this in as I speak. So this is a Locosys GW60, like that. The reason I went for this one is because it's the official speed watch of the Windsurfing Speed Sailing Association. So I thought if it's good enough for them, then it's definitely good enough for me. And the nice thing with that one is it gives you a load of statistics. You can get your statistics as you go, but it will tell you your top speed, your average top speed for 2 seconds, then for 10 seconds, then your top speed for 500 meters, and so on. So you can get all of the statistics, because sometimes if your top speed isn't so high, like perhaps if you're regularly getting 20 knots and your top speed says, okay, you got 19 knots, but then you look at your average speed over 500 meters, and that says your average speed was 18.5 for 500 meters, then that is absolutely cooking. So it's another way of being a bit happier with the speeds that you've achieved. But it's really nice to have stats. I love to have some stats. But of course, there are loads of different GPS watches out there, like Garmin, I think, are probably the kings of the GPS market. So pretty much anything from Garmin, which is what I think you want, something which is pretty simple, robust, very waterproof, and you get big readout numbers, so you can just check your watch as you're going along. Now, I'm not wearing GPS at the moment. This is the trusty Timex Ironman Triathlon, which I've been using these for about 30 years now, if not more. And they've always just done what I want. Yeah, so there you go, Stefan. Hope that you find something, but that is what I use anyway. All right, this is Ryan in Maui who is replying to the trailer mast crutch question. Says, I made a mast cradle out of some 2X's and an old cutting board that sit on the beam to protect it. Nice. All right, we've got Steptoe Son 007. Nice one. From the Isle of Wight, sailing Dart 15. Very nice. Glad you could make it. Good to have you on board. All right, then we've got Oh Yeah in Puerto Rico. Okay, Ralph's on board. He says, hi. The Hobie 16, is that the best boat for learning when starting? Okay, it's a very good question. And this is something on my to-do list. What are the best types of catamaran for learning to sail on? But the Hobie 16 is a good type of boat to learn on because you can, well, the main reason why it's a good type of boat to learn on is it really does work on so many levels. You can sail a Hobie 16 as a novice sailor, or if you're converting from a monohull to a catamaran, but the Hobie 16 just keeps on giving. The more experience you get, the more you'll get out of the boat. And the Hobie 16 also, on top of that, has got a very good racing fleet, like where at a world or European championships, they'll regularly get over 100 boats. So it's very popular, the most popular catamaran in the world, with more Hobie 16s made than all of the other catamarans put together. There are more 16s. I believe that to be true. But is it the best type of boat to learn on? It's not the easiest by any stretch of the imagination because of the shape of the hulls. Let's just have a quick chat about hull shape, shall we? Three main types of hull shape. For those of you who regularly tune in to these, you've probably seen something like this before, but we've got the Hobie 16 with the banana shaped hulls, and the profile of that hull is like this. So this is what we call an asymmetric hull. So the asymmetric hull is one of the more difficult types of hull shape to deal with, because what every hull shape needs is something that stops the boat just sliding sideways through the water. So on the Hobie 16, we've got a flat outside to the hull, and it's that flat outside that stops the boat from sliding sideways. But because of the shape of the hull, it doesn't have any central or fixed pivot point, which does make it a bit more prone to stalling and makes it more difficult when tacking or performing maneuvers, because the pivot point on a Hobie 16 or an asymmetric hull is pretty vague. It would probably be, all right, that's an exaggeration, but that whole area there, which makes it more tricky. Yeah, but the good thing with the asymmetric hull is they're generally very, very strong and they last forever. But boats, modern boats, which are being designed these days, are not being designed with asymmetric hulls because some people just really don't like them because they are more difficult to sail with. All right, so the next type is okay, not sure about this bow profile. Let's have a bit more like that. All right, so this is what we'd call, and then and then from behind it would look like that. So this is what we'd call a skeg hull. And the skeg hull would be seen as the best type for a beginner because it combines durability with the ease of use. It's easier to use because the pivot point is in a more centralized location, which would be like here. So that's where the boat pivots. It means it's much less likely to stall, so to get stuck into the wind, and it's much easier to tack because the boat just pivots on this point. And it's this skeg hull, which is the device that stops the boat from sliding sideways. So anything with a skeg hull is very good for a beginner sailor, but compared to the Hobie 16, there will be fewer skeg hull boats around, especially secondhand. New, there are more skeg hull boats around new than there are with the asymmetric hulls, as I said. And then they are also very durable because the bottom of the skeg hull is generally built very strong. Not on all boats, but the ones that we use, Wildwind, we have the Hobie Pacific and the Hobie 15, which have the skeg hull. And these skeg hulls are really, really solid. But at the other end of the skeg hull scale is the Dart 18, which is probably the most popular of all skeg hull boats ever built. I should think, I'd have to check that, but I'd be pretty sure that that is true. And the skeg on the Dart 18 is pretty fragile. Like if you pulled that up a beach with a rock on it, there'd probably be a bit of a chunk missing. And then you've got, in fact, that's where I'll leave it for now with that. And then the third type, another interesting bow profile like that. And then this type is another symmetrical hull, but this type of hull would have a centerboard or a dagger board. Can we go down here? Yes, we can. So the dagger board is actually retractable. So if we're sailing in shallow water or on certain points of sail, we'd actually pull the dagger board up and it actually goes all the way through the hull like a dagger through the hull. And so you can lift it. The dagger board hull is actually the easiest to sail shock because it's got this extremely well-defined pivot point of the dagger board or centerboard. And it means that the boat spins just on that point, making it very, very easy to tack. But the reason that the dagger board hull isn't suitable so much for the less experienced sailors is because there is definitely something else to worry about when you're sailing. Like if you hit the bottom with the dagger board, then chances are you're going to do some pretty serious damage. The hulls on a dagger board boat are generally built more for the racing sailor rather than the recreational sailor or the less experienced. So it's going to be much more fragile. So it's like how fragile it is, which detracts from these type of hull shapes. So there we go. And then there is a little matter of construction. There are two main types of construction through catamarans these days. One is the traditional method, which is like some sort of fiberglass or foam sandwich construction, which would be like the Hobie 16, Dart 18, whatever this is, the F18, all fiberglass boats. Whereas there's another breed of boats which are made from plastic. They're like molded plastic boats. And these molded plastic boats, which would be like a Dart 16, Hobie Getaway, to name but two, these boats would be extremely durable, and you could run them up the beach, even if it's a pretty nasty, stony beach, and you're going to do more damage to the beach than you are to the hulls. So there you go. Hopefully there was a few nuggets of information there. But when learning to sail a cat, like even with the boat with the dagger board, if you are careful enough, then it's not out of the question. You can learn cat sailing on any type of boat, but with the boats which are slightly less suitable, like the F-18, even the Hobie 16, it just means you'll want to stick to a lighter wind before jumping to get used to sailing the boat in less wind. Because if you take out the Hobie 16 is a very powerful boat, and if you take it out in more than 10 knots of wind without having got used to it, there is a chance that you will be punished, and that punishment will come in the form of a swim, which is happening all the time. All right, so there you go, Ralph. Hope that was helpful. All right, we've got Pierre in Italy. Great to have you with us. He says, when do you start sailing Lefkada? I would imagine I'll start sailing like early April, I should think. We have to get all of the boats out of storage, start assembling them, doing a bit of a refit. We're doing a major mast refit this summer, where all of the masts are getting reconditioned and brand new rigging, which is coming from Hobie Cat. So the original Hobie Cat rigging, because I think it's actually 4 years. It should be 4 years. If it was 3 years, I might be a little bit keen there, but it's 3 or 4 years since I replaced all the rigging last time. You probably saw some of the videos. And then during that process, if it's looking champagne sailing conditions, I don't think I'll be able to hold myself back from just nipping out for an hour or so for a sail. There we go. Tim says, trailing a Hobie 16, I use a towel folded several times between the side of the mast and the top of the crossbeam. 2 bungee cords over the mast to the rear tramp lacing, keeps it in place. Perfect. You could also use an old buoyancy aid or life jacket as well to give that padding at the back. All right, Pierre says, I sail an RS Aero and a Dart 18. Nice. All right, we've got Johnny 1. Hello, Johnny. I hope you're doing well. Yes, very good, thanks. Got a special question. Oh, my word. I sail an FX1 and I'm currently searching for a jib. Did some digging. Do you know if Tigers use the same jib as the FX1? No, the Tiger jib does, you know, if this was in when we had all the boats assembled, it would be quite easy for me to check this. So I'm not going to guarantee this, but I'd say 90% certain that you can put a Tiger or an F-18 jib on an FX1. I don't think that it's too long in the luff. It'll be, of course, I was going to say it'll be the luff length and the length of the foot that are the contributing factors to whether that would work. But that basically means it'll be the size of the sail that will say whether that works or not. But I'm pretty sure we have had Tiger jibs on our FX1s before when we're sailing them as an FX1 too. But yeah, sorry, unfortunately, that's the best I can do at this time, just because I don't have an FX1 available to take some measurements from at the moment. There you go. We've got Captain Kowalski. Great to have you on board in New Jersey, USA. Love watching your vids. Thanks. All right, nice one. Glad to have you with us this afternoon. While we've got you all with us, if anybody has got a spare finger, if you could just hit that like button, it just means that more people will get to see this, which is good, because I am trying to reach the widest audience possible with this stuff. All right, we've got Unpronounceable there who says VOM red. Thank you very much for that. Tiago asks, what is a good price to buy a used Cat 16? And what to consider when buying a used catamaran? All right. So I would say if you want to get a used catamaran, then if you go, there are some bargains that come up sometimes. But if you want to get a boat and not really have to do anything with it so that you can take it out sailing, you don't have to do one of these big refurbishment projects, I'd say something like 2.5, maybe 3,000. Can't remember where you are, Tiago. Are you in Portugal, was it? Just having a look. It's nice to know. Portugal, yeah. So in Europe, yeah, about 2.5, 3,000 euros should buy you a boat which is ready to go. But I've said it before, when you're buying a used boat, if the rigging, so the wires that are holding the mast up, if they haven't been replaced in, let's say, the last 5 years, then I would certainly budget for replacing the rigging that holds the mast up, because that is one of the major safety considerations, is going out sailing. If you don't have any sort of safety cover, your mast coming down is something that could mean that you might not get back to the point that you start off from, which you don't want that. You don't need that. So replace your rigging. If it hasn't been replaced in 5 years, I would certainly make the investment. Even from Hobie Cat, the cost of Hobie Cat rigging, which is probably the more expensive way to go if it's a Hobie, it's to replace the shrouds and the forestay and the bridle wires, the wires that come from the bows, cost something like 150 euros to have all the wires that hold the mast up. And that is a small price to pay for your peace of mind. Other things to check when you're looking at a used boat would be, firstly, the hulls. So you're looking for soft pieces, soft spots on the hulls. The most likely soft spots would be, we'll go back to this one. If this is the danger zone for soft spots on most catamarans, because it's at this point where most people are getting on or off the boat. So that's taking quite a lot of impact just from there. If it is going soft, then it does need to be repaired. So that is something to bear in mind. Something else to look at is have a look at the bottom of the boat. If the boat's been dragged up the beach quite a lot, if it's showing bare fiberglass on the bottom, then again, that is something that is going to need to be repaired. If you're looking at a Hobie 16, where these pylons go into the hulls, just have a look at those. If you've got somebody with you when you're looking at a boat, lift one of the bows of the boat like that. There he is. He's lifting it. And if when you lift one of the bows of the boat, if the other hull doesn't move at all, and you've got this hull quite high up, then maybe the boat's had a lot of use. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't go for it. But if that is happening, then one of you should go and take a look just here at each one of these where the pylon goes into the hull here. And just when you're lifting it, just look to see if that pylon is moving against the hull. That should be absolutely solid, the pylon and the hull. So if there is any movement there, that's going to cost a bit to put right. What else? The rudder system, generally okay. But one thing to check is just have a look. If this is our rudder blade, looking down it from behind, sorry, beg your pardon, looking down it from in front of the rudder blade. The rudder blade is generally made from two halves like this. Just have a look at the joint and just see that the joint is good. If the joint is broken, then that can be an early warning sign that your rudder blade is going to break. We're just being thorough here, that's all. And then the other things, are there any dents or bits of sinister looking corrosion on any of the metal parts of the boat? Like on the, if we go 3D here, here's our front beam. And we've got the Dolphin Striker, of course. So around the base of where the mast would go, is there any corrosion there, holes, anything like that? Have a look at that. And yeah, plenty to look at there on the mast as well. Look for any corrosion. And then all that's left is the sails and the trampoline, which you should be able to just visually get quite a good idea of the condition of those. If they've got loads of repairs on, that probably means they're going to fail again. So you might have to budget for replacing the trampoline or maybe the jib or something. But picking up an older boat, like for €1,000 or something, if you change the rigging and the trampoline, this makes a massive transformation. And I did have a look this week at the cost of trampolines. You could get a vinyl trampoline for about €500. So, and that really gives your boat quite a facelift. So there you go. There's a few things to have a look at. And Gustavo says, Joe has a good video on this. Oh, yes. I have done most things now. This is great. Ralph, who asked about the Hobie 16ers for learning on, says, I'm going to get one then. There we go. Sold. If you're having any difficulty, Ralph, in finding one, just let me know and I will spread the word that you're looking for a Hobie 16 and just let me know where you are and we can find one, I'm sure. Right, John Claude says, how tight should the shrouds be on your boat? All right, this is a great question. And I think at this point, I'm going to go into the preloaded questions because they're all on this topic. All right. This is a pretty juicy topic, but I think we're ready. We can do this. All right, I hope everyone's having a good time. Just wiping the board. While I'm wiping the board, if you've got a spare finger, once again, just give that like button a stab and we'll proceed. All right, so we're talking about mast setup. So hold on, I'll just get these preloaded questions. So in fact, the preloaded question askers, are all here in the live chat as well. We've got Ryan and John Claude asking similar questions. So we'll go for John Claude's one first. He is sailing a Dart 16. How tight should my shrouds be? When I rigged the Dart 16, I made them fairly tight. I sailed recently a Hobie Wave in Tobago. Her shrouds were really slack. Didn't seem to affect it. Pardon. For my boat, I was worried about the mast popping out if it wasn't held snugly. Okay, so yeah, I've actually done a bit of research on this topic of how tight should the shrouds be on a Dart 16. So firstly, let's just have a quick that's not bad for a Dart 16. It's not that good at all, really. Dart 16 hull shape, front beam, back beam, mast, just there. Okay, so before I answer your question about how tight the rig should be, we're just going to look on a boat like this. So on a Dart 16, we've just got two different ways that we can affect how the mast is set up. So one way is like John Claude is asking, is the tension in the rig, like how tight the wires are, like if you grab hold of the wire, how much it will move. And the other thing that we can alter is the mast rake. So the angle of the mast in relation to the boat. So how far to the back it is. So what we can do is with a boat like this, we'll actually set the mast rake using the shrouds. This is the same for the Hobie 16. So on the shrouds, you'll have an adjuster where there'll be like maybe 5 or 8 different places where you can put the pin. And the shrouds are going to stop the mast from going any further forwards. Am I explaining this well? I don't know. Anyway, I'll carry on. And then the forestay is what is going to, on this type of boat, is what is going to adjust the tension in the rig. I know on the Dart 18, I'm not sure about the Dart 16, but the rig tension is done on a rope that goes between the forestay and the bridle wires just there. What I would say with the tension of the rig on this type of boat is what is too tight first. Too tight is when the mast can't rotate all the way to 90 degrees. If you've really cranked it on and the mast won't go all the way around, you've made it too tight. So you do need to loosen it off a little bit. And then at the other end of the scale, what is too loose? Well, to check if it's too loose for security reasons is if you come and stand between your hulls, grab hold of the mast like that, and just try lifting it. If it's actually possible to lift it, if you think it's going to be possible to actually lift it so it comes off the step, then that is too loose. So those are the extremes. Then what can we actually do with the tension in the rig on a boat like this? We can actually do it in a very similar way to how we do the Hobie 16 as well, in that in lighter winds, we want to get it pretty tight. So if there's enough wind to sail along nicely and occasionally lift the hull, that's when we want to have the most power in the rig. If the wind is any lighter than that, we don't want it so tight because it's going to take more effort for the mast to rotate. And we really need that mast rotation to be working correctly. So we'll have the mast a little bit looser if the wind is really, really light. But when there's good wind, but perhaps not quite enough to trapeze, or you might be trapezing, but not so much that you're having to depower the boat, then you want to have the mast pretty tight. But as I said, not so tight that you can't rotate the mast fully. Does that make sense? And then as the wind increases and we are starting to have to depower the boat, then we want to loosen this off a bit, which is going to allow the sail to the mast to come back more, especially on the upwind leg and on the reaches. And it's going to allow the mast also, if this is the boat, looking from behind, with the rig looser, same as on a Hobie 16, Hobie 14, anything basically that doesn't have diamond wires, the rig will be allowed to go this way because the pressure is always going to be pushing the rig to leeward. And by the rig going to that side, we're going to be losing some power by it just falling off slightly. So it will just be spilling nicely like that. There we go. So that is the tension of the rig in a nutshell on these type of boats. Then if we look at the mast rake, the first thing we want to do with the mast rake is have a method of how we can measure it. So with any catamarans, we can measure the mast rake by using the trapeze line. So what we would do with the trapeze line is we'd untie it from the elastic first, attach a piece of rope so it's long enough, and then we take the trapeze line so that we've got rope long enough so that we can touch it onto the bow fitting here in a fixed point. So this is almost for your own reference, as much as I couldn't find any real rig tuning instructions, but you want to know every time you prepare the boat that you're preparing it the same. So you take the trapeze line, pull it tight. As well as that, at the same time, if you get your friend to rotate the mast fully and just pull the other shroud, the leeward shroud, as it were, to make sure the mast can't move, because we want it to be the same every time. And then pull the trapeze wire tight, touch it here, and then we're just going to walk this towards the back of the boat. And I couldn't find any information for the Dart 16, but what I could find for the Dart 18, which does share quite similar characteristics, is the point that we want to touch this on really depends on the sailor in the Dart 18s. There are people who have it go to here, which means the mast is really straight upright, which is going to make the boat more powerful, but more of a pitch pole machine when it starts getting windy, because we've got more weight and power to the front of the boat. And then there's some people who sail with this line coming all the way back here. But what I would say seems like a good starting point to put your mast rake is to have it so that this touches at the hull. So always at the hull, the back beam just there. And then what to do after that. And this mast rake explanation goes for any type of boat as well. So, but not necessarily the point. Like on Ryan's boat, Ryan's 500, which we're going to come on to in a second. It's a more modern design, and it's got a more modern rig. And I would guess we're going to want this on that boat to be more like on an F18, where we want this line to actually come down to this point here, about an inch or so down the back of the transom there, which means the mast is much further back. It means it's going to go upwind better, less weight on the bows, so the bows are less likely to be driven under. And there we go. But for some reason, on the Dart 18, people are sailing with the mast much more upright, which perhaps is because that gives them a bit more power. There we go. Just thinking there a bit out loud. Yeah, so that is the mast rake. Then the mast rake, to adjust it, what we'd need to do is we'll find out where it is. If we don't like where it is, we have to loosen off the forestay, then have one person on the trapeze, then the other person can take out the pin, move it up or down here. Then you need to do the same on the other side, of course, and then remeasure it. But the way to find out really where is the sweet spot for your mast rake is to take the boat out for a sail and find out. How do you know if it's in a good spot? You'll feel it in the rudders. So if you go out sailing and your rudders are stalling all the time, if you're just not getting any real traction with the rudders, then your mast is probably too upright and you need to bring it back. Whereas if your rudders are really heavy, then your mast might be too far back. But of course, that could be because your rudders aren't set up very nicely. That's another topic. All right, at this stage in the game, I'm going to take a short commercial break. Be going for 1 whole hour. Oh, could you believe it? So no more questions in the live chat, please. Because as I mentioned at the start, it's pizza night. And I don't want that bad boy getting cold. Oh, no. All right. So where is... I'm looking for my cursor. So I hope that helps there, John Claude, with the rig tension and the mast rake on your Dart 16. Yeah, but the main way to choose about the mast rake, go out sailing, see how it feels. And it will change a bit in different wind strengths as well. So like in a heavier wind, you might need the mast back a little bit more. In lighter winds, a bit more upright. There we go. All right, so then we have got the same question pretty much from Ryan, who's got a NACRA 500. Now, the NACRA 500 has the third way that we can set the mast up, and that is with pre-bend. It's got spreaders on there, and just an explanation of what we're talking about. So if this is the mast, this is where the rigging attaches. Then from just below there, we have a wire that goes on either side. And then halfway down these wires, we have these pieces, which are called spreaders. So if this is looking kind of straight onto the mast from the front. If we were looking from the top, there's our mast. There's our spreaders. So the wires go to the end of the spreader and then to what in England we'd call a bottle screw, but I believe in the States you might call that a turnbuckle at the bottom of the mast. Now, what we can do with, in fact, let's draw the other axis as well. So this is side on. So spreaders there and diamond wires there. They'd be coming back slightly like that. Yeah, so what we can do with the spreaders and the diamond wires is we can actually pre-bend the mast. So it's putting a bit of curve into the mast. If I just draw an exaggerated curve like that, which helps us to control the shape in the sail. The more bend, generally speaking, the more bend that we have in the mast, the flatter we can get the sail. So if it's going to be windy, or if you're particularly light for your boat, you want to have more bend in the mast. Or if you're sailing generally in less wind, or if you're a bit heavier, you have a straighter mast, because then that's going to give you more power. All right, so how do we go about doing this? Right, the first thing that we do is we would set what we could call the spreader deflection or spreader rake. How far are these guys coming back? There'll be some sort of adjustment on these. And I had a look on the NACRA tuning guide. Again, not much information there for the 500, but it says that the minimum amount of spreader deflection you should have is 4 centimeters. Yes, we're metric. How do you measure the spreader deflection? What we would do, this is Joseph's ruler. He gave it to me at the Tornado Worlds. Thank you, Joseph, if you're watching this. Is you take a straight line like a baton is good, put it between the tips of the spreaders. Of course, they're going to want to be adjusted exactly the same on both sides. And then you take a measurement between the back of the mast and this straight line, and that is what your spreader rake or spreader deflection is. Now, the spreader rake, you will set to the weight of the crew who will generally be sailing the boat. I can imagine that the NACRA 500 would be fairly similar to an F-18. And if it is, then what they said the minimum is 4 centimeters. But what we're doing is for lighter crews where we want a more bent mast to help take power out, we would set this to 6.5. Again, apologies for the metric system, everyone in America, but it's what I was brought up on. So it's very difficult to get into these inches that you use. So that's if you're light. So let's say up to 140. So what do? We go less than 140 kilos, 6.5 on the spreader deflection. Then if you are between 140 and what we got here, 160, I am reading the numbers off here, then we'd go to 6 centimeters. And then if you're heavy, so what would that be? Greater than 160, then we'd set these to 5. Those are the numbers for an F-18, but I'm sure they'll be about the same for the NACRA 500. And then the reason we're not adjusting the spreader deflection for different wind strengths is because this adjustment is really time consuming and difficult. So you want to set it once and then you're good to go. So if you're sailing with a variety of different weights of crew on board, look at how heavy you are and then think, well, I'll be sailing with Jim. He's a big guy, but then I'll be sailing with Janice and she's tiny. If you're Australian, then maybe it's best to set it for this medium setting, and that's good for everyone. That's what we do with our boats here at Wildwind because we are sailing with a lot of different people. Okay, so that is the spreader deflection. And then the next way that we're going to adjust the setup is with the tension that we're putting into these wires, the diamond wires. And the tension we will change for wind strength if you're really keen. Again, you can just set it once for a medium amount and that will do you. You won't even notice. But if you're competing, then it is a good idea to get the tension in your diamond wires correct. Now, to get it really right, you do need to have a rig tension gauge. Because otherwise you are kind of guessing. There is a way that you can do it, but just the numbers here, since we're into some numbers. So if we are sailing in less than 8 knots, so light wind, we want this tension here to be 35. So less tension, it's going to give us a straighter mast, more power. If it's between 8 and 17 knots of wind, that's when we're really looking for power, not really starting to depower. Then we're going to boost that up to 40. So we're going to tighten them, bending the mast a bit more. It's going to make it easier to put the downhaul on. Very nice, happy days. And then if it is greater than 18 knots, we're going to crank that up to 45, which is going to bend the mast more, which again is going to flatten the sail. It's going to make it a lot easier to get the downhaul on. Once again, happy days. So if you don't have a rig tension gauge, one thing that you can do to get a rough idea of have you got enough tension in your diamond wires is with the boat on its side or with the mast down, get your diamond wires on, tighten them up so that they kind of ping rather than rattle when you flick them with your finger. And then if you take your main halyard from the top of the mast all the way down to the bottom of the mast, this is exaggerated heavily. This should be pulled so it is dead straight, the main halyard. Then what you want to do is at the point where the spreaders are, you could take a measurement there, and that wants to be about 2.5 metric centimeters, something like that. But there we go. There's a lot of numbers there, a lot of information. I hope that is helpful, Ryan. And if like, let's say the odd one out here is in the case of the Hobie 18. The Hobie 18 has diamond wires and spreaders, but it doesn't use pre-bend. The purpose of the diamond wires and the spreaders on the Hobie 18, which may be, but I think I'm wrong, I think I'm right. So on the Hobie 18, the diamond wires and the spreaders just stiffen that part of the mast. They're not actually there to give this amount of pre-bend. So if you're sailing a Hobie 18, don't try to get this 2.5 centimeters on. Don't just keep winding it on, going, no, it's not working, because it's all going to be a bit more in line. You'll have very stiff mast. There you go. All right, I hope that's helpful. All right, we've got Hans on board. Hi, Hans. Great to have you with us. Greetings from Austria. Lots of wind here today, but freezing cold. Ha ha ha! The Colonel has just piped in with a £5 English donation. Thanks very much to Colonel Failure there for tucking a bit of cash into the metaphorical G-string. Very kind. If you're into any gaming, by the way, Colonel Failure, great gaming channel, and he also happens to be my brother. All right. Numsi. Okay. All right. Where are we up to? Thanks very much for that. That's sort of that'll pay for half of the pizza. Nice. All right. Nick says, I was looking to buy an FX1. I believe I concluded that the Tiger jib is compatible. There we go. All right. Then we got who's next? Tornado 6021. Hello. Great to have you with us. Scott there in Cultist Lake. Probably not in Cultist Lake as we speak. Hello. Great to have you with us, Scott. Dropping it in the slots as always. Gustavo says, I'm stalling on about 1/3 of my tacks, meaning the boat doesn't turn completely. All right. So this is actually going to be the last question that I actually answer, I think, at this point, because I've been going for quite a long time now. But if you're not making your tacks, then what we need to look at is your whole, let's just break it down once again. With the tack, in your preparation for the tack, number one, you need to be sailing as close to the wind as possible. So crank the main sheet in. If the hull lifts a bit, you can sail a bit closer to the wind so that your hull comes down a bit. And you could just go really, really close to the wind. You don't have to be sailing fast to go into attack. So get prepared, get on this point of sail, get yourself organized on the trampoline to make it as easy as possible for you when it comes to moving across the boat. So it's not like a kind of an uncomfortable transition across the boat. And then once you're on the correct point of sail, as close to the wind as possible, really wind the main sheet in all the way. Even if it's really windy, crank the main sheet in hard. If it is windy, you're cranking the main sheet in, hull comes up, then just turn more into the wind, but keep the boat sailing at this point. Don't let the boat stop. You can go slowly, but you want to keep going. And then once you're in this position, that is the time to initiate. So if you think of it that you're steering the boat, you're sailing the boat up to head to wind. So push a little bit, maybe a bit more slowly into the wind. And then at the second, when the wind comes in the other side of the jib, at that point, and it has to be at that point, if you leave it any later, then you might not succeed with your tack quite as well. Yeah, as soon as the jib backs, let the main sheet off, let loads of main sheet off, keep the jib where it is, and that should put you through the wind. If you're stalling and you're doing that, then perhaps you need to look at what you're doing with your rudders. So when it goes through like that, when the jib backs, then just put the rudders all the way across, because you want to be getting out of that head to wind spot as quickly as possible. And then when you're moving across the boat, just be really aware of what you're doing with the rudders as you move across the boat, because that could be another little stumbling point during the tack. So I hope that helps there, Gustavo. Yeah, just for your information, from last week's Q&A, what I did notice was there was a lot of people who could really benefit with some more information about helming on the trapeze. So this week coming up. Oh, and thanks very much to Ryan, who's also slipped $5. We're getting some different currencies here, who's just donated $5. Thanks very much, Ryan. Very kind. Yeah, if anybody else wants to try out that feature, you are very welcome. Of course, that's the pizza paid for by Ryan and Colonel Failure. So thanks very much, guys. All right. So, yeah, so this coming week, I'm going to be going a bit more into helming on the trapeze. No, I can't get out on the water to demonstrate, but what I can do is chop up some existing videos and then doing a bit of commentary, which might be extremely valuable to those of you who aren't yet confident in moving out onto the trapeze. So that's what I'm going to do. And then perhaps what I'll do the week after, I think, is the same, but for tacking, because I think the two big points that people struggle with the catamaran is helming on the trapeze and tacking. We've got Rit Xar. Sorry for the pause. Hi. All right. Gustavo says, I've learned to recover from stalls, but would like it to happen less. I think it's important to stall quite a lot in the early stages so you know what to do. But yes. All right. Scott says, is anyone sailing in Santa Cruz or Monterey Bay area in early March, Lake Grapevine, Texas, Dallas in late April? Would love to hop on board as crew. So I didn't articulate that very well. So we're looking for Santa Cruz, Monterey Bay area, early March, or Lake Grapevine in Dallas, Texas, late April. Let us know in the comments if you're going to be there and if you want Scott to jump on the boat with you. Scott is a good sailor. He's very fast. That's fun. All right. Ralph is in South Africa. Nice. Maybe I'll see you there in a couple of weeks, Ralph. Yeah. So if you're in South Africa selling a Hobie 16, Ralph wants to buy it. Right. We've got California home choice. Yes. Santa Cruz is here. All right. Maybe California home choice needs to have a chat with Scott and line up some boating there. Ralph says, have one that I'm looking at. Thanks for trying to help. Just need a bit more advice. Perfect. Ryan says, get it, Ralph. You won't regret getting on the water. Nice. Jake, good morning. I'm ready for class. Sorry, Jake, I'm just about to log off. We got Jeff from gearreport.com. Yo, nice to have you with us, Jeff. All right. Damien's here. Any tips for changing the mast base on a getaway? The spare I ordered finally arrived. I should just change it. Any tips on stepping the mast on a getaway. Thanks. Greetings from the Galapagos Islands. I think, Damien, unfortunately, I have pretty much run out of time, but what I will do is, can I do this? I'm going to copy and paste your question and put it into next week's session. I'll actually do a bit of research on that as well, because I'm not so familiar with the getaway. But definitely when doing any work on your mast, it needs to be sealed. Very important. So get some like Sikaflex sealant or some sort of sealant to seal your mast. All right, Carl says, thanks for the Hobie 18 info. Ryan says, thanks for the info. Great rundown. Weekend sale coming. Nice. Can't wait for show us your cat. Be well. Ryan's looking after the bees. Very important work that Ryan's doing there in Maui. All right, California home choice. Laura is here. Santa Cruz. Yes, come and sail the Hobie 16. This is perfect. This is how the Joyrider TV global community are working to put this together. All right, thanks very much, Captain Kowalski. Great to have you with us. There's a yikes from Mark. I'm not going to mention that again. Does the carpet match the drapes? No comment. All right, so thanks very much to everyone for tuning in. Yeah, cheers, Damien, for understanding there. Yeah, I'll put that into next week's session. I must dash because there's nothing quite as disappointing as a cold pizza. So I'm going to log off and I'll see you on Sunday. Try to actually make it to the premiere of Show Us Your Cat. Apologies that sometimes I don't make it to those premieres. But I think what's nice is that those of you who are watching it when it's going out, you can do a bit of live chat between yourselves, even if I'm not there. Oh, we've got Irvin there from Mauritius. Nice to have you with us, dude. Hope you're doing well. All right. I'll catch you later. Thanks very much. And I'll see you soon with some more on Joyrider TV. Nice.